An ASU Basketball 2021 campaign, which started out with very lofty preseason accolades, ended up being one of the most disappointing years in recent memory in Tempe, came to an end yesterday with a loss in the Pac-12 tournament quarterfinals to Oregon. And there's a lot to discuss, a lot to dissect about the year that was for ASU basketball, and wanted to invite Sun Devil Network basketball color analyst Kyle Dodd to review what we've seen in the last 4 or 5 months over here. Kyle, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's been a long, weird year, and it's weird that it's over, but I'm doing all right.
Yeah. So wanted to talk about the fact that it was a weird year. And I know that maybe the fan base is kind of split in the middle. Some are just saying, call it the COVID mulligan. You really can't, be that disappointed about what we've seen this last year. And some people more critical, and maybe you can't blame them for having a squad, which was the most talented one we've seen in Tempe in a long, long time, not even come close to deliver, ending with an 11-14 record. Now that you had a night to sleep on it after the loss yesterday to Oregon, what do you make of this 2021 season for the Sun Devils?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say I'm like everybody else. I'm disappointed. I'm bummed out. I had, big expectations, high expectations. I thought the roster was very talented. All that being said, I'm not mad. I'm not upset at the coaches. I'm not upset at the players. I'm not calling out players. I'm not calling out coaches like people are doing because of what they went through this year. And I think regardless of any record of any college program in the country, any sport this year, it's not that they get a mulligan. It's not that they get a pass. You're trying to win games and you're trying to maximize your ability, but nobody knows what everybody's going through. Nobody knows what Stanford's going through. Nobody knows what Oregon went through. Nobody knows what we went through. It's just one of those years that, I mean, at no point did we ever have our full roster. At no point did we ever have really that starting five that we, coming into the year that we projected. Did we really have them for more than 1 or 2 games together? At no point did, Marcus and Josh and Remy and Verge and those guys get enough games under their belt or enough practices together to ever get a rhythm. The bigs were constantly banged up. You lose Romello White before the year and you cancel 9 games. And I think all of that contributes to, it was a bipolar year. And I think they played a little bit bipolar. It was up and down. And I just tip my hat, though, to those coaches and those kids for what they went through. And every time they stepped on the floor and competed in the maroon and gold was a win to me. I don't care what the scoreboard said.
I mean, do you feel that, having said all that, were there maybe some issues within the program's control, which you can look back, and I know hindsight is 2020, but still come to the realization that maybe there is some aspects that could have handled better, even with all the adversity that was going around?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's all kinds of stuff, we lost a lot of close games where I think, and even Coach Hurley touched on it in his post-game stuff and some of those close games where they didn't execute in certain situations or didn't get the stop they needed or didn't get the big rebound to finish the defensive possession. And there's a lot of stuff. And it like I said, it's not that we're giving anybody a pass on basketball stuff, but there's a lot of things that had they gone the other way or made a play here or there or finished out a game like they did against Washington State the other night, finished out on a 6-0 run and instead of giving up being down 6, it could have been a totally different season. But it's just, like I said, I just think it's been such a weirdly bizarre year, and I haven't been able to get too high on the wins and too lows on the low, to be honest with you. I really appreciate the fact that in all the effort of all the athletic department, the trainers, the doctors, and Ray and all their staff, and just getting these kids out to compete is been amazing to me.
So the 2 biggest storylines that I feel, and I know there are negative connotations to each of them, is the play of Remy Martin and also the 2 5-star freshmen, Josh Christopher and Marcus Bagley, and their unavailability for long stretches of the season. And obviously those 2 storylines had a major, major effect on the play of the Sun Devils. Let's start with Remy Martin. Just way too many peaks and valleys. And to me, the biggest head scratcher is that somebody who actually ended the regular season as the Pac-12 leading scorer and was maybe the easiest selection to the first team All Pac-12 team. Still, you look at the last 3 games leading to yesterday, was in single digit scoring in each of those games. And when you look at the game against Oregon, sure, he had 16 points, all of them in the second half. And you can say that just little, way too little, way too late. Have you been able to maybe figure out what was going on with Remy Martin the entire year? And is there any way to even slightly discount the effect that his play had on the Sun Devil season as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, it has been a different year for Remy than we've seen. He has had some big time highs like we've always seen, and then some lows where he just hasn't played as well. And to me, the last couple ball games, he looked mentally fatigued. He looked physically fatigued, and that kid went through a lot this year with the passing of his grandfather, who he was really close to. And we saw a different Remy after that when he came back and he had that stretch in the Pac-12, and he went on that scoring tear. And I saw the Remy that was playing with his hair on fire that we saw for the first 3 years. I saw the explosive Remy. I mean, he was getting dunks and steals and hitting threes, and he was the best player, I thought, for that 8-game stretch when he scored over 20. I thought quietly he was the best player in the country. I mean, playing the best basketball in the country. But because ASU was kind of under the radar at that point, nobody took notice outside of Tempe. But, certainly I think there were times this year where Remy really struggled, probably with, the atmosphere. I mean, Remy's a kid that, he holds his, heritage close to his heart. He plays with a passion. He plays for the fans, and to look in the building sometimes and have it be empty in your senior year, I can't imagine that would be very easy for him. And I think you definitely saw that there was times, not that he looked disinterested and not that Remy's not always going to compete, but I just didn't see that same, it's kind of like a blank stare sometimes. But there were other times where I saw him put his team on his back and carry the load. And I was really happy for him on senior night to hit that shot. And I think it was awesome to see him kind of see his family, and it was cool. I wish he could have gone out on better terms. But again, I'll tip my hat to Remy. I think he's one of the best to ever lace up the maroon and gold.
And a lot of people, talk about the legacy of Remy Martin, and obviously this past season, it was so different than the 3 seasons that preceded it. It sounds to me that you perhaps agree with me that regardless of what happened in the 2021 season, that his jersey should be up there in the rafters at Desert Financial Arena.
I think so. I mean, I think a guy who was part of 3 20-win seasons in a row and would have been 3 tournaments in a row, which hadn't happened since the 60s. I mean, and I think that's what's awesome to see. I see the frustration. I see the stuff on Twitter and social media. I see the frustration right now, and I think that's a great thing. I think that means we have a basketball program for once. I've said for years there were times when we were horrible and it was just apathy and nobody cared either way. And I think that's the biggest problem you can have in college sports, when nobody cares whether you suck or you're good. And this year I think people were bothered by it, but Remy had a huge part in this success they've had over the last couple of years. And this year was obviously not the year that he wanted to end on, but I think what he's accomplished in his time here, I would, maybe it's not, maybe you got a couple guys that got to go up there first ahead of him, obviously, I think, that are still left. But I think before it's all said and done, I would love to see Remy's number up there for what he's done, on the court and off the court.
And like I said, the other storyline, again, a lot of negative connotations, a lot of detrimental, I would say, connotations to it is the play of Josh Christopher and Marcus Bagley, and really just both of them being unavailable for such long stretches. Josh Christopher obviously did not play since pretty much a month ago today. Marcus Bagley did play on March 4th last, but obviously had that stretch from the end of January leading all the way up to March 4th, and then not playing. And then obviously since March 4th, not playing as well. Obviously they came with so much promise, and those are the 2 players, probably more than anybody else on the roster, that really were supposed to keep ASU in the top 25 for the entire year, make them a contender for that elusive Pac-12 regular season championship. Give me your opinion, and maybe it's hard to give an opinion of what you saw from those two players and the impact that they had when they were there on the floor and the adverse impact they had when they were sidelined for so many weeks.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you got to play without players of that caliber, it's tough. And I think what was even tougher than anything is they never could get all together to get in a rhythm to start learning how to play with each other. And I think that was the toughest part for me. It's just right when you thought maybe things were getting back to normal and Marcus was healthy, and we saw the difference they made when they're on the floor. I mean, when Marcus was on the floor, the way he stretched the floor, the way he gave us more depth on the inside, got on the glass, defensively guarded. I mean, it's clear we were a way better basketball team. Josh, same way. Josh added another dynamic wing, a high level NBA type level athlete, did some great things defensively, offensively, and, again, way better when he's on the floor. That being said, the small amount of time that they had on the floor, I thought there were stretches where they looked like they were trying to feel each other out. Not Marcus and Josh so much, but Marcus and Remy, Marcus and Verge, Marcus and Holland Woods, and Jalen House and Jalen Graham, and all these guys trying to learn how to play with each other. And you have a different lineup every night. It's tough. So, I really wish those guys would have been healthy the entire year. It's unfortunate. And I know late in the year, people were frustrated. Why aren't they coming back? Why aren't they coming back? Are they just going to sit out? And I think both were legit. They were hurt. I mean, they got hurt. Not saying, if it was a different year, they might not have been able to tough a game out here or there. But I mean, for what their future holds, no, I don't blame them for making sure they're healthy and making sure they're 100% before they get back on the floor. And I don't know how that all played out. But I know they were both legitimately hurt. We saw the fall on Josh Christopher. I mean, that was brutal. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I wish those guys had a different year in maroon and gold. But, for the short time, the short amount of games we had them, it was fun to watch them a little bit.
And I know that a lot of fans were really upset about them not being available, and their frustration came out with that consistent question that I was getting. And heck, if I had a buck for each time I got that question in the last 3-4 weeks, I could retire right now. How can those players even be considered first round NBA draft picks? And I told them, I said, look, you and I are not making that decision. NBA scouts are making that decision. That's why you're seeing a lot of mock drafts that I'm not saying have no expert analysis on it, but also have a lot of input from those NBA scouts thinking that both Christopher and Bagley are legitimate first round NBA picks. Just give me, your own expert opinion. Are you surprised that those two players are considered right now to be first round picks and right now really being one and done, just waiting for that official announcement to come sometime in the next 2 weeks from each of those camps?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised with how the NBA draft has shifted. Could those guys use some more time polishing their games? Absolutely, just like anybody in the first round could. But right now, the NBA's built, especially the draft's built so much on what your ceiling is, where your ceiling is, and it's one of those situations where if they're projected in the first round, you have to go. You have to, because the longer you stay around, the longer they pick apart your game, the longer that you have a chance to you get hurt or whatever. And like I said, the older you get, the more of that, ceiling, or, hey, this guy could be this guy could be the next Kevin Durant, this guy could be the next Dwayne Wade, or whoever it is. So, I mean, I think that's where they're projected, because that's their talent and that's where their talent projects. And we see, we've seen it on certain plays, and we've seen their body types, and that's where they project. Now, are they going to end up that, being that type of player? That's up to them. That's on them and how hard they work. And I think both of those kids have shown that they're hard workers and get after. They're both great kids, and I wouldn't put it past them to be, in the league for a long time and be a legit first round type player.
Is there something to be said that it really was hard to develop any chemistry because the number of games that you had, what we thought was going to be the starting lineup to begin the year: Remy Martin, Alonzo Verge, Josh Christopher, Marcus Bagley, Jalen Graham. I mean, I didn't do the research ahead of time, but I can't believe there's more than maybe 5 games that all 5 of those players were on the floor. Now you can say, okay, well, that's why you should develop good depth and a good bench to really compensate for that. But is that like one of those things that maybe easier said when done? Because when you talk about those caliber of players, four of them either proven veterans or just freshmen that really came with such high accolades. Is something to be said about not really ever having a depth unless you're a true blue blood to really compensate for not having all those players for such long stretches of the season?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, again, you got guys, and we don't even talk about Tayshaun Cherry, who was probably, projected to start a lot of games and be a huge contributor this year, a guy that was supposed to step up and step in with the departure of Melo. And, I think with all those absences, I thought the depth was there. I thought you had enough guys to play, but then even the depth was beat up, even the guys that came in, and then those guys would get healthy and you'd see, oh man, these guys, they're starting to play well together. Oh, okay, these guys come back. Now we got to incorporate this. And then, now this guy's down. And I mean, Holland Woods was the only one that played every game, I think, this year, which is insane to me. I mean, I didn't miss a game in 4 years. I know most of my teammates didn't miss a game in 4 years. Just think about that. I mean, I was talking to, Eddie, my boy, Eddie House, the other night. He didn't miss a game or a practice in 4 years, and it's a different time, but it's just imagine all these guys. Not Holland Wood's the only one that played every game this year. And so I think that was a huge part of it, just trying to find a rhythm, trying to find out how they were going to play, when they were going to play. And I think that was a big contributor. And I know I'm probably coming off like I'm making a bunch of excuses. And like I said, trust me, you know me, you see me up there, Hode. I'm just as ticked as anybody when we lose. I hate losing, and I want it so bad for these kids, but I just know that this was not normal. This was not how it was supposed to be, and we'll take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some games, Kyle, where you wanted to take that bag of Sour Patch Kids and throw it on the floor and discuss. But
exactly.
You did fall short of that, so I'll give you credit for that. I didn't want to talk about the whole roster, but I think there's some players that definitely deserve mention over here, just to get your take. Let's talk about Alonzo Verge. Much like Remy Martin, in all likelihood, did play his last game as a Sun Devil. Just like everybody else on the roster, did have some peaks and valleys. But I thought for the last few games, really was able to be that star player a lot of us thought he could be in the beginning of the year. And I know a question that I really got a lot during the season, again, if I had a buck for each time type of question, Alonzo Verge came into the season as a reigning Pac-12 Sixth Man of the Year. And maybe there were some instances where, like you said, just having so many injuries and so many absences that really had to be in the starting lineup. But that transition from coming off the bench to being that everyday starting player, do you think that maybe it kind of affected Verge maybe more in the beginning of the season than it did at the end? And what do you make of the season that Alonzo had?
Yeah, I think Verge, I think he's better off the bench for this ball club. I thought he was, really good at times in both, roles, but it's clear that he's played his best basketball since he's been here off the bench. Unfortunately, again, that was not what was kind of in the cards for this team. I think at times, Bobby had that ability to do that, and we saw him bring him off the bench. But then, I mean, there's other times it's like, we need you to play. So it was tough. But the thing you say about Zoe, and I know he's definitely a favorite for people and fans to be either really hot on or really cold on. But I love the way the kid competes every night. Sometimes he tries to do a little too much, which I'd rather have a kid that's trying to do anything he can to help his team win than a kid that, just doesn't care. So, I mean, I think Zoe is, sometimes he over dribbles, sometimes he tries to make plays that aren't there, but you know what? He's a heck of a basketball player, heck of a talented player. And I think he's got a long history in the game somewhere in this world.
Yeah, I know some of the talk up until now about specific players has been somewhat negative. So I'll just shift to, I think, are the three feel-good stories in terms of just individual players for Arizona State. Let's start with Jalen Graham. As somebody said, I don't know how in the era of COVID-19 you're sidelined with mono for weeks and weeks, but at the same time, I've never seen a player come back that strong from mono than I saw Jalen Graham this year. I know there was obviously so much build on what he can bring to the table, like you said, with the loss of Romello White, which is somewhat of an unexpected transfer, if you will. What did you see from Jalen Graham? Because I think that he was able, maybe later than everybody wanted to, but really build on that foundation he had a freshman year. And I think when you look ahead, that's one player that, if you're looking at a bright future for the Sun Devils, or maybe a bright future for a player in specific, I think Jalen Graham is one guy that really fits that bill.
Yeah, absolutely. I think his upside's really, really, big time. I think he's got live legs. He's got long arms. He's got great touch around the basket. His footwork's pretty clean. Even recently, there's a couple times he got whistled for travels that I'm like, that wasn't a travel. I just think he's so long that sometimes he covers so much ground. But yeah, I think he's a guy that this program was probably relying on a little bit too much this year. We saw the talent, we saw that it, have the ability, and I think with Melo gone, you're like, all right, everybody kind of assumed, okay, this kid's just going to flourish. Well, he, again, he had his own issue, and he got mono, and then he came back, and he was, I think, maybe sitting out and watching, maybe helped him a little bit. And he came back a different player, and he changes the game on the defensive end. And then he changes the game on the offensive end when he can stay on the floor and stay out of foul trouble. I think the biggest thing, for him is he had some hard luck fouls. I thought he got whistled for a lot of fouls this year where I'm like, man, that's not a foul. But it became an issue because he had those fouls, the silly ones that he needed to stay away from, ones that just, 80 feet from the basket, or just trying to make something out of nothing. I think those are the fouls the next couple of years. If he can stay away from those silly ones, so then the ones that really aren't fouls don't hurt him.
And a player that is so unfortunate that he had what looks to be a pretty serious injury, something that would keep him out for the next few weeks. The season was still going on, and that's Kimani Lawrence. It's always a guy that I penciled in as an X factor going into the season. And I don't know if you agree with this take, but I think that with Marcus Bagley being absent for so many weeks, that allowed a guy like Kimani Lawrence to really come into his own. A player that, unfortunately, in his own right, had so many injuries early in his career that really, I think, prevented him from being the player everybody thought he could be when he first arrived in Tempe. But what do you make of the season of Kimani Lawrence, a season that definitely ended, let's forget about the game yesterday, on a much higher note than it really started?
Yeah, I think Kimani he started playing with confidence, and, he had some ups and downs, and it's kind of been a roller coaster starting with his freshman year. Wasn't able to play. The Devils go out on that crazy 12-0 run, and then he comes back trying to, get in where you fit in. And he had some good games late. I remember UCLA game his freshman year, and then sophomore year, he's kind of stepping into more of a bigger role and playing really well in the preseason, in the Vegas tournament. I mean, he hit a game-winning shot against Mississippi State and looked like the best player on the floor at times. And then, banged up a little bit and banged up last year, and, gives him good minutes, always plays hard, but you kind of forgot about him a little bit. And then this year comes in, and you're like, oh yeah, come on. He has one more year, and he bulked up. Body looked great. He was, huge. Him and Remy were thick in the first couple games, and you're like, wow, they really got in the weight room. And I think he struggled a little bit with the shot to start the year, and then he just kind of, something clicked, and he just started playing some of his best basketball, and he played free. He played out in the open floor. He was really good finishing around the rim. He's, those creative finishes, kind of up and under. He finished, over the top sometimes, had a couple really nice dunks. And the 2020 game was huge. I think that was a huge step in the right direction for him. And he just kind of built off the middle of the season all the way to that 2020 game. I think he just had probably the best stretch of his career, and great kid. I can't say enough good things about him. Again, another kid that you wish would have went out on a different note.
Yeah, no, just one more question on Kimani before we move on. I think that maybe in a tragic, weird way, if you will, the injury that he has right now may really derail, I think, his process of trying to play professionally, which may be overseas rather than domestically. Do you think in some kind of, again, tragic / weird way that maybe this injury and the fact that he can come back to ASU for one last year. Do you think that maybe kind of changed the plans for Kimani?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be a different case by case because, I mean, a kid like that, who enjoys college and, is maybe not going to get the offer that he wants, right now because of, they don't know about his health. Who knows? Maybe he says, hey, you know what? I want to come back and do this one more time. And I think everybody would welcome. I think anybody would welcome anybody back. And I know Remy teased us a little bit the other day on the post game. I was like, wait, what? But I think it was just that, a little bit of a tease. But again, I wouldn't put it past any of these kids. I think they're welcome back. I think a lot of them, it's probably time to grow up and be on their way, and that's okay too. But I think Kimani, if he did come back, it would be awesome.
So now, I know, Kyle, you're not a whole lot younger than me, and you probably remember back in the days, Detroit Pistons, Vinny the Microwave Johnson, one of the best bench players ever in the NBA. And that player this year was definitely Jalen House. Again, maybe like Kimani, more in the second half of the season rather than the first half, really showed what his contributions. But just an unbelievable elevation in play from Jalen House. I think somebody that maybe had a hard time coexisting with Holland Woods in the beginning of the year, and whether you credit it to injuries or whatnot, has really come into its own. When you look at the future of ASU basketball for the next couple of years, he's one guy that's definitely going to be a big part of that foundation. What did you see from Jalen? What do you think makes him such a special player for ASU? Very different player than his dad, Eddie, but still, I think somebody that can have in his own right the same type of impact.
No, I think definitely. I mean, he's a kid that I'll go to battle with him any day of the week because, and I told his dad too, those are the kids that you love. And we try to, as I'm a coach, I coach my kids and in different sports and stuff. And I try to tell my kids all the time, like, control what you can control. And you can always control energy and effort. Those are things you can't, cause some nights you're going to go out and you can't shoot. You're just not making a shot. You just have those nights, some nights the officiating's horrible, which it is most nights, but, you just can't control those things, but you can always control energy, effort, being a good teammate. And that's what Jalen House is. He's an energy guy. He plays his tail off every night. I know there was a lot of talk late in the year, like name some guys that come through ASU that plays as hard as him, and I there's a handful of guys, but nobody harder than Jalen House. And I think not only does he play hard, he's now starting to play with confidence on the offensive end. He shot the basketball pretty well this year, took good shots, pushing the ball on the break. I think it's a guy you can build around for next year. I think he's a true, legit point guard, smart, very underrated is on how smart and high basketball IQ he has. And then defensively, I mean, just a nightmare. I used to pride myself, you remember, yeah. I didn't do much offensively. I played all game, every game, but, I think I averaged 4 points a game, but I was trying to lock you up and I was trying to frustrate you the entire game. And I used to think I was as good as anybody at that. I was, half of what Jalen House, I cannot imagine having to play against that guy. So I think he's a guy you can definitely build around and hand the keys to, and he's only going to get better as he, emerges as the leader. And I'm excited for him in the next couple of years. I think he's going to walk out of here, in one of the better Sun Devils.
I know you and I are in agreement on the next question. A lot of people think that Bobby Hurley should be on the hot seat. Some people think he should be even gone from the program just because he hasn't delivered on those expectations. I assume that you're in the same mindset as me. Think that's nonsense. But I'd like to hear your arguments about the job that Bobby Hurley did and what that means for his future in Tempe.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that thinks he should be on the hot seat or anybody that thinks he should be gone is just, I'm sorry, you're dumb. You're dumb because. I'm going to just call it like it is. ASU basketball has been places the last couple of years that me and you, Hode, a lot of these fans had never imagined. Mm-hmm. And to take a year like this and say, and if you want to judge some play calls or some defensive adjustments or some lineups. That's what you earn that right as a fan. There's nothing wrong with that. But to say that he should be on the hot seat or he should be on his way out is just dumb. It's stupid because 321 seasons, 20 wins in a row. Like I said, not since the 60s. You got 12,000 fans on Thursday nights versus Washington State or Oregon State. I mean, come on. You got 14,000 fans against Oregon. You got UCLA games, U of A games, preseason games getting 10,000 fans. I mean, I played in an arena in front of 6,000 or 5,600 in the last weekend of the year. We're battling for the NCAA tournament, and then we play Oregon State on a Thursday night, and there's 6,500 people. Like, come on. Like, I get what you're saying. This was a frustrating year, but I think Bobby definitely, this was a tough year. He had a lot to deal with. So I think there's things that, personnel-wise, he's got to figure out, coaching staff-wise, with the loss of Berno, his good buddy. And then, there was things I thought they could have done better offensively, defensively, all that. But that's what every coach does in every offseason. So he'll get back to the drawing board, figure it out. And like I said, by no means am I saying fans don't have the right to critique, because they do. And there's times when I was like, oh, what are we doing? Why are we running this? That's what you have. You have that right as a fan. I just think the people that are chirping saying that he's on the hot seat, that's absurd to me. I mean, so take it for what it's worth.
Yeah. So let's talk about the future of ASU basketball. Let's really take the assumption right now, which is not outlandish by any means, that all the seniors are gone. So that's Remy Martin, Alonzo Verge, Kimani Lawrence. The 2 5-star freshmen are going to declare for the NBA draft, a matter of when, not if. Josh Christopher, Marcus Bagley. Let's also assume that Tayshaun Cherry, who missed such a huge chunk of the season due to personal reasons, is not back. So knowing that the roster we have coming back are the roster without those players, the recruiting class, let's be honest. I mean, not eye-popping names, 4-star prospects or anything like that. What does Bobby Hurley, in your opinion, have to do to really ensure that what we saw in 2021 was indeed an aberration, and he can really bring it back to a team that can be a 20-win or close to 20-win team, a team that can be on the bubble for the NCAA tournament, if not better than that? What do you think Bobby Hurley and staff needs to do in the 2021-22 season just to bring everything back on track?
I think get healthy. I mean, have a full roster, have a normal year, get kids incorporated into your system, have them play the way you like to play, which, Bobby's had teams where we've had, recruits that, a roster full of kids like Trey and Shannon and those guys. That group, that wasn't a bunch of 5-star McDonald's All-American, but they were, they played, they took on the personality of Coach Hurley, and they played extremely hard, and they played a fun brand of basketball. And he's had a mix over the last couple of years, transfers, and a guy like Zylan Cheatham, and then you get a big recruit like Lou Dort, and Bobby's done a number of different ways since he's been here. I just think he's got to get guys in here and a full roster and a full season, and have our great fans back that, back in the arena, and get some energy back, and play that style that everybody loves, and coach that style that everybody loves. And, personnel wise, there's no secret. You need to add a little bit of size, a little bit of bulk. And I think some guys getting healthy and having another year under the belt, like Chris Austin or someone like that, you could see some changes next year. But I just think it'll be good to have a quote unquote, hopefully we have a quote unquote normal year heading into next year, and a chance for him to coach a full team for the full year with a full arena and have a normal basketball program again. So I'm excited. I know it just ended yesterday, but I'm excited for next year already. So.
Well, Kyle, as always, I really do appreciate your insight. Like you said, disappointing season, but there are some bright spots that hopefully the team can really carry to the future. Really interested to see what's going to happen in this offseason. I think probably the most challenging offseason Bobby Hurley has faced since he's here in Tempe. So we'll really be curious to see how everything does unfold for the 21-22 season. As always, Kyle, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hod. Anytime, man. Go Devils.